So, change, right? I've spoken now probably a little bit into that. What we're going to do today is we're going to talk about DevOps, Agile, Cloud, how it's going to impact the government, how we need to change. The theme that I had was breaking the silos. We've all heard that. So there's a lot of that within the discussion that we're going to talk about. Some housekeeping. Next one. I am also shamelessly plugging some new stuff that we're doing here. So those of you some of you may be following me on Twitter already. I started up working with some other people, the GC DevOps League. I had a meeting with a couple departments. We were like, there's got to be other people in the government doing this kind of stuff. Wasn't a lot, so I said, hey, let's start up this non-government government working group or community society, whatever you want to call it. And so we did that, and now we realized we really need to have its own handle. So there is a new Twitter handle. I ask all of you to follow that handle. There are going to be questions going out on the handle today throughout the meeting, and also during this session, if you want to put a question in while we're talking, these guys are going to be taking a look at it, and they'll be sending that to my Slack chat, sort of moderating a little bit for the ones if it's convenient for us to ask during the discussion. Please use the hashtags. It's important that we tag what's going on here today. So. The other piece is, they were not given the questions beforehand. Okay? I explicitly said I'm not going to give you the questions. I didn't want the canned answer of it, but I did give them the theme. So it's not like we're coming in blind. It's a safe space. You guys, I want us to be able to talk. We're not going after anybody, but if we get something juicy, we might explore it a little bit. Okay? Let's see if I can get it down here. So I think we're going to go to the next slide. All right. Word salad. You guys see all these words? Silos, Kanban, Scrum, Cloud, DevOps. You guys use them, right? You guys use them? Right? You're all familiar with them? They're words right now. They're very hot words we're using. Which the problem is we need to take those words and put them into action. Right? That's the problem. We talk a lot about it, but it's really hard to make it happen. So today, I want to talk a little bit about how we're going to make this happen. What are some of the barriers that we're going to have to doing that? So, action, right? Let's put it into action. We need to figure out a way to do what we're talking about here, and bring it back to our agencies, our departments, our way of working, right? There's lots of different viewpoints on it. I think that based on what I saw from your responses, we all share a very common sort of theme and idea about what we need to do for cloud, DevOps, Agile, people, process, right? This is not a technology discussion right here. We are talking about how do we actually physically change the culture. And so there's one quote that resonated with me. I recently attended an event 2 rooms over around the corner for the DPI. And Sarah said basically, one team, one plan, one success. Sub out the one plan for one project, one product, whatever. The idea is that we have to break down the silos. We have to understand that we work together, change the way that we talk. We are one unit. This is the way we're going to push things forward. So, go ahead. Enough about me talking. I want to talk to you guys. I want you guys to talk. So, a little bit about the panelists. And guys, I will ask you to say a little bit. I'm going to throw it to you, but I did do a little bit of research beforehand. On the far left here, we have Julie Lease. As you can see up there, she is the Chief Digital Officer for Transport Canada. She is responsible for, as you said in your bio, for the broader transformation, right? Mm-hmm. You started your career as a cartographer?
I did in geomatics.
Yeah, so I actually started with geology. I don't know if there's a theme going there. And I'm wondering if all those architecture maps that we talked about are relevant to the fact that we're in cartography and geology. I don't know. It's a theme I saw going. So beside her we have Ross Ferguson. He's the head of product and service delivery with Canadian Digital Services. He is joining us on secondment from the UK, right? Digital Services over there, right? GDS. So you're seconded, right? Does that mean that GDS is actually still paying for your salary?
Yes.
That's a good thing. I got seconded, I'm not getting paid. So you know how that works, right? Anyways, we've got Luke here with SSC, right? And Luke, you're the CTO over at SSC, right? Big challenge there. You and I talked a little bit prior to this. You had some concern about the amount of time that you've been with the federal government and the language that we use and getting into the details of it. So I assured you that we weren't going down that road. One thing though, you have an engineering background, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a little test for you, it's a government test, right? Do you know what the acronym SRE stands for?
Yeah. Site Reliability Engineering.
Passed. Excellent.
Actually, it's going to be a good question to ask me also.
Exactly. So, and that was, it's not just government, but I figured it was a good way to see if you
I would have failed that one. Just
Yeah.
saying.
And in the middle, we have Britt. And Britt was really concerned about coming up and sitting on the panel. She's like, Mike, do you want me to come and sit on the panel? And I met her, whether it was through, I think it was Calvin, I don't know if he's having another discussion that introduced him, brought us over to the department to talk about DevOps and what's going on with PSPCs. She's a digital advisor, right? Transformation, digital, stuff like that with PSPC. So, you know, you're concerned about, you know, being up here. And I said, I'm not sure if you've got any labels, but, you know, I'm pretty sure the label that I would put to you, and I own that one too, is kind of the disruptor, the piece of that. So, to the other panelists, you'll know why Britt is here. I asked her to come up here and stir the pot a little bit. So if I can't do it, hopefully Britt will help me in that, and I will do that. So I talked a little bit with each of you. Would you like to say anything more? Do you want to go?
Yeah, quickly, joined SSC in January. We have, you know, it's a new branch, a CTO branch, and we're there to basically bring all the technology aspect to SSC, and we have the cloud team, we have the enterprise architecture team, we have security, management and assessment, we have a strategy group for digital enablement, we have the digital enablement group, so a lot of new things. It's a bit like starting a startup within you know, a company that's been there, an entity that's been there for 7 years, so very interesting challenge. The work is cut out.
No, you have a, for sure, you have a
That's the reason I came back to government. I used to work at the CSC and early my career, did a long stretch in the private sector, 6 years at TELUS doing cloud stuff, so it was a good time to make the change.
I'm really happy that you're here to bring that angle of the private and TELUS large corporation in Canada. So and what we talked about initially, I'm really interested to hear what you have to say. So thank you for being here. Great.
So I've done my whole career in the government. I was bridged in as a student into CRA, and then I moved to PSPC, and I've been at PSPC for about 11 years, moving around, because it's a giant department. I was very miserable when I started my career as a developer. It's not an easy thing to come from a place where you're learning constantly and having new challenges, to come to government and you're following process and you're really constrained about what you can do, and generally discouraged about innovating and having creative ideas. So it was really hard for me to stay in government until I got to around the CS3 level, when I started to lead teams and I started to get a sense of ownership about how we can actually do things. So since I started doing that, I was a lot more motivated about my career and a lot more interested in getting involved and trying things out. So it's kind of where I've landed now, is in IT strategy with these people up front, I guess. For GCY programs and services at PSPC. So a lot of the big programs, most notably GC Docs, sorry. But working with all of those teams to, well, help the transition they've already been making.
Ross.
Bon matin, I'm Ross Ferguson, and as Mike says, I'm the head of product and service delivery at the Canadian Digital Service. I'm on loan from the Government Digital Service in the UK, where I was their head of product and service management. Slightly different title, but largely the same thing. I originally worked at the Foreign and Commonwealth Office in the UK, and then this thing called GDS came along and sounded quite interesting, so I went there and went from sort of on-prem QA, releasing maybe once a month if we were lucky type delivery to being swept along at GDS and delivering, shipping maybe every hour, everything in the cloud, lots of disciplines all in-house. It was wild and it was great fun, and I've never looked back. After a tour there on gov.uk, I went and joined, went and worked at University of Bath, and then Scottish Government, and then back to GDS again, the opportunity to work with all the teams there at GDS as the head of product. And then I met Scott Bryson and Alex Binet in the UK. They came for a visit to see how GDS was doing things, and we got talking about Ottawa, and I have an uncle in Bell's Corners. They said, well, if you're ever over visiting, you should come and see us. So came over to visit them in October 2017, and went in for an hour to see CDS. Ended up spending the day, and then I came back in January and ended up spending 2 weeks, and then I'm now here.
You're gonna stay. You're not gonna go back. We love the weather.
Who can say? Who can say? When hopefully summer will arrive soon.
Well, thank you for joining, and I like the perspective that you bring from another. Bring the other outside of our own government, right? Another government perspective. So, last but not least, Julie, and I'll ask you to keep it brief because I think we have very limited time, I guess.
Okay, I won't go long. I've only ever worked in government. I'm like you, started as a student. I'm a government weenie through and through. I know all the acronyms and the stuff to blow you away. But look, the one thing I would like to say is there is not a more exciting time to work in the digital space. Like 33 years in government, there is not a more exciting time. So take your space in it. It's up to all of you guys to seize that. There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of cover for that change with senior leadership, Treasury Board, paving the way from policy perspective, folks at SSC, like it's really exciting. So hopefully this conversation will get into some of those aspects and things that all of us can do to sort of change government and make your jobs really fun.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate you joining as well. So I wasn't sure which question to start with a hard one or an easy one. And you know what? I think I'm going to go the hard one first. Okay? And this one is actually one that I personally like because I personally wrote the question. So, I joked with Floyd, who's running an architecture discussion across the way about Agile and DevOps and architecture. So you guys can go talk to Floyd afterwards about this because it's going to be interesting. The question actually, I'm going to direct to you, Ross, to start with. And other panelists, we're going to kind of see where we go with it. So, in the new world of IT, is enterprise architecture dead? And are cloud and DevOps guilty of murder? Right? How do we extract the value that architecture has told us it wants to deliver? So, is it dead? Are we the ones that are taking it apart?
I mean, I don't think so. I think there is a place for it. I don't think it's about bringing in these new ways of working. It's not about dispensing entirely with the old. I think it's about bringing in additional skills, additional techniques, new culture, and applying them to the right kinds of problems. Why would you dispense with the tools in your toolbox that you already know can work in places? I think you're better to have more rather than less going on. So I think it's important to have the choice. But what I think is that we're just being too slow to pick up as a collective, too slow to pick up on the new tooling, and not doing enough to pick up on the principles. It's kind of like old principles, new tooling, and that can't work.
Okay, so principles. So you're then, I guess you're saying it's still there. So in my experience with it, and as I asked the other panelists what you think about it, enterprise architecture traditionally sells us on heavy upfront requirements gathering, long 5-year strategies and roadmaps. Agile DevOps doesn't really work that way. So what do you guys think?
It's just a matter of changing your mindset. So enterprise architecture can still exist, it can still have a function, but it has to change its approach. So if you're going to ask for all the requirements up front, well, you're going to get bypassed. So it's adopting, making sure you can do your job and do the things you're responsible for, but in a new way.
Yeah, I would agree with this. I had an enterprise architecture group, and they're morphing into doing different things. So, for example, the artifacts will be different. If you're going to decide to, let's say, re-platform, rewrite an application, let's say you got your 1959 COBOL application, and we do have a lot of this, you need to rewrite it. You're not going to use the same architectural paradigms you used at that time. You're going to use, let's say your cloud provider architectural palette and try to use these components, but you're going to have to follow principles. And some of the principles we need to put into enterprise architecture are things like reliability. What is your engineered availability before and after? There's a lot of things we need to put in the paradigms there in architecture that were not there when we were building applications before. So I think it's all morphing into a more agile thing. It's less about the server, but more about the service I'm going to use, the API, and all this. But I think there's a big place for it as architecture.
Okay, so Julie, you've got a lot running right now. You got like 12 teams going, right? So how is architecture going for you?
So it's not dead, not dead. In fact, to me, it's almost more important, but it's changing. So for me, when I started at Transport as the CIO 3 years ago, the architecture, and I see some of my faces there from our department, it was like the cop of the organization. Architecture and IT security, they were the ones that told you no to everything. And you had to, people feared going to an architecture review board because they had to produce all kinds of documents and prove, their ability to go forward. It was more about compliance than enablement. So when we restructured our CIO shop at Transport Canada, we kind of did an experiment, and I pulled architecture and IT security out of the group that they were in, and I put them in a new team, along with innovation, UX, service design, all of this kind of new stuff, and we called it digital services enablement. And because we wanted to hack the culture that architecture and IT security, it's about changing the culture away from compliance to enablement in terms of how can you help people. But it is very important still. It's shifting, and it's a little bit different than what it was before. It's not about the thousands of requirements in a document. It's more about journey maps and personas and user experience things. So that business architecture is changing a lot, but probably becoming more and more important. The last thing that I'll just say, for me as an ADM, I sit on a lot of meetings, and I tell my team all the time, my favorite meeting to go to is our architecture review board that I chair. That is my absolute favorite one because it gives me the most insight into the culture in my organization and how it's changing. That particular committee is fabulous.
Okay, so what I've heard from all of you, and it's safe to say that we agree that there's some architecture still remains. I'm curious though, when you have an architecture review board, where it fits into something like a 1-month sprint, and then you need to be able to change what frequency do you run your architecture review board? Because traditionally, there is a lot of pre-planning requirements, analysis to get to that architecture review board to then review it. Does it work with your agile sprints? Does it work?
Am I going first? I can carry on. Like it's sort of tied to our project management framework that we're sort of based on waterfall approaches. So we're sort of hacking away at our project management framework with our agile projects and the architecture review. So things come into architecture review board at the concept stage, when it's just a concept. And so that are 1 month quick turnaround things, they'll come in at a concept stage with maybe a very high-level discussion about architecture, but it's more, you were mentioning it's about principles, like it's almost turning less into standards. It's not, I shouldn't say that, my team will freak out. We have standards, but it's sort of principles based. Like, are you thinking about in this project cloud? How are you thinking about APIs in this? How does it connect to everything else? And it's those kind of discussions.
Because it's software-defined architecture, right? If you think of it, it's software-defined everything, network. As we go there, you can actually have these architects be in the sprint teams and make changes that weren't possible before, right? Because you can, we selected this technology, we're locked up with this vendor. Now, you have the possibility of changing your mind because you get latencies, you get things, and it's not like, oh no, we have a problem. You can actually change things.
Okay, so on that, I want to key in on that one, and I'm curious enough, I'm going to bug Britt on this because it's down when we actually do it. Are the architects actually in the sprint team? Do you find that your enterprise architecture are sending people into that shift left discussion to be part of that one team, one plan, one success?
No, it's not happening right now, absolutely not. It exists as a black box. Things go there and we wait, and usually because the queue is so long, because everything has to go there, we end up bypassing it. It just has to happen. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't. I feel like they're maybe not being, it depends, like, it sounds like you're taking the approach at a top level to make that happen. You're making sure that they come to that. But if that same sort of pressure isn't being applied, they have no need to change because they're doing what they're being asked. So they have to be asked to do something different in order to change that. I'm sure they would be willing. We've reached out a few times and they've come to meetings and they've come to give us advice, but you have to set that expectation that that's part of the job.
And I specifically asked that question because I've witnessed that, I've seen that. So, Ross, UK, you guys, you've really been doing this for a while. CDS, where's architecture at CDS?
Well, we don't have an architecture review board for a start. We don't have a GDS, we don't have a CDS. The USDS 18F down south, they don't have that either. And so we more expect to get together a lot more regularly for a lot smaller decision-making points. So typically at CDS, we have a sort of a group of community leads. So we have myself, our head of design, our head of research, our head of security, head of policy, and we would rove around the team. So we're maybe at sprint planning, we're maybe at sprint review on a weekly or a fortnightly basis. Definitely a sprint review. We might go to stand-ups. We do a regular check-in with the teams, at least every 6 weeks. And depending on whether they're at discovery, research, or an alpha prototyping, or a beta, release or live, business as usual sort of stage, there's different things that we're checking for in there. Each one of those kind of 6 weekly checkpoints is it's an opportunity to look broader and look at some of the bigger sort of riskier decisions, but a lot of that is more kind of looking to sort of validate what the teams have already largely decided they're going to do through their research. And I think if you a little and often like that, multidisciplinary, you get through a lot quicker, and it feels a lot less, right, we're meeting once a quarter, time to make a decision, I don't have the right information, I'm just going to take on that risk on it, and that's worked in the UK for critical national infrastructure, and I think it can work here as well.
I love that. So I think that might speak to, correct me if I'm wrong, the state of maturity that you're at. So we still need our architectural review board because it's not happening naturally across all teams. We've got some teams that, on their agile teams, they've got the architects right in there and they're working that way, but that is certainly not the case across all of our projects or products. So we still need that discipline to almost start forcing the culture to do that.
Yeah,
I think as you go forward, though, you might get there. I'm intrigued by that.
And you asked the question, at TELUS, to say when we transform from, applications going from data centers to the cloud, we had to form these new DevOps teams, and we did, use SRE as the Google SRE kind of model. And so that's why I need to answer the question. And the SREs, basically they came from either, ops background with skills in programming, or coders with, some skills in infrastructure, but a big part of the team were actually architects, okay? Because they knew, what to use, the guidelines they could actually establish, so we have the CI/CD stack, the right tools to use. So they had a different role. So it's not architecture as we knew it before, but I think they're part of these DevOps teams now. They've got different labels, right?
And so the question was meant to be provocative. I think the message that we'll move on to the next question, but what I want to wrap this up is architecture isn't dead, it's changing, right? And so, there goes the theme for the day. It's changing. I think the reality is, Britt, you and I, we've experienced, we need to get the architects, though, like you said, into the teams. We have to take them out of their ivory towers and drop them down to, we're now doing architecture on an iterative way. And it doesn't matter whether it's software, whether it's designing systems, with cloud, whether it's cloud architects, we have to change the way we work. We are shifting left, it's part of the design. And in fact, right now, what I've witnessed, it does become a little bit of a limitation for our velocity as we move forward, because we still have architecture review boards that sit there and oversee this stuff. So I think the theme is still alive. We need to do more to try and change it and iterate on it. So thank you for your answers on that one. Next question. So do we go with an easy one or do we go with a hard one?
Hard.
Hard. Okay, Britt, you're up. This was one of the ones that was on the Twitter that we put a poll on. It was interested people. So the risk word, risk aversion factor. Are we really allowed to fail? Right? You guys all heard Alex Benet, fail fast. Right? Get up there and fail. I can tell, and I'll tell you people in the room. Each of them were asked, tell me a story or a success and failure. Right? And the failure won. Nobody threw anybody under the bus, right? We're all very government. We won't we won't expose any large failures. So, are you allowed to fail? Are we really allowed to fail? And our share?
So I think we are encouraged to fail, but not in the way you think. I think everything is designed to fail. We are so encouraged to fail that we are forced to follow the same steps that we do every time that have led to failure over and over and over again. So are we encouraged to fail? Yes, but not intentionally. Those are supposed to be there to mitigate risk, but usually the processes are there to hand off risk. I've done my due diligence. It's on them to take this failure. Instead of just letting people fail in small quantities, we fail big by design. So allowed to fail? Yes, forced to fail is more like it. But then the way you asked it, are we allowed to fail? I think in pockets, yes. In some places across the GC, you can experiment and fail and learn from that in a safe environment, but I don't think we are there broadly.
Okay, so before you guys jump in on this, I'm going to key in on something you said. In experiments, we're allowed to fail. So does that mean that the more, and you use the term, our 18 karat gold applications, our stuff that is like bread and butter, failure is not an option?
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So how do we have?
Well, failure is not an option because the things that we're doing are so massive in scale. So these big, huge systems that we keep us supported are so massive, and the changes we make are so complicated that failure is catastrophic. So you're not allowed to fail in that, but if we change the way we work to do failure in small chunks, so that something was down for 10 minutes, but you could easily bring it back up again, then we would be able to do that, but we're not designed to fail.
Yeah. You look like you got something.
Yeah, I mean, I had for a big chunk of my life, enterprise applications and new applications like the digital world, web apps, when you look at the way we talk about, digital apps for citizens, a lot of that is about systems of record and systems of engagement, and you build a new experience. These things are complicated, fun to do, And you can use a lot of the new technology for it. And when you get into the enterprise application and you have like big responsibility, they have a DR, it might be an active system, I think we're not allowed to fail, but we're allowed to experiment. And I find that here, after 6 months in government, I feel that we should have like multiple rockets, programs to go to the moon. Instead of saying, okay, we're going to procure this, what if we were to give a DevOps team, give it a try to do this module now in your favorite language, and if it passes the test, we're okay. So I think we should experiment more to be able to change more rapidly. So that's the feeling I get, just a lens of 6 months into it.
Okay, so, and I got one on the Slack side of it, and so it's a good point to this. Is this why we start to call everything proof of concepts, pilots? We all know how we do this, right? Oh, I'm not going out with a production system, I'm just doing a pilot, right? Is that what our safe word?
Yeah, and then suddenly that pilot becomes live. I don't know how that happened.
So I mean, yeah, like what do you do in your organization, Julie, to make sure that we can fit?
It's an interesting question because risk is so baked in the government culture. Like I said, I've been here 33 years. People's go-to place is to tell you all the reasons why something won't work, or all the issues, or all the things you've got to worry about. It's just baked in. So it's a hard mentality to shift. And our processes and bureaucracy is all just feeding into that. So what I find interesting at Transport, when we started to do the shift to agile teams and product management, it started taking care of it almost magically on its own, because kind of to what you said. So what we weren't doing anymore, when you think of product management, it's not the 10-year project that's $15 million and you find out 3 months before it's done that you failed and you just spent millions of taxpayers. That's not a good failure to talk about. It's very different in product management when you're doing sprints every 4 weeks or something, to find out you just did a sprint and it went left when you should have gone right and you can course correct. You're not talking about millions of dollars, and it is magically and naturally just a learning thing, and you can pivot and change. So for me, I don't know, like, it just magically changes the culture as you go there. We've got about 10 or 12 agile teams set up now, and we still have a lot of waterfall teams, but it's a different mood, and it's a different way of working in those teams where failures don't become failures, they're just learnings. And because it's in short pieces, and we've organized our work in short sprints where you can pivot. Even the money we're asking for, we're starting to poke at how we get our funding for capital projects, and not, before we'd ask for everything, here's our business case, give us $7 million over X number of years. Now we're saying, just give us enough money to do this first piece, and we'll come back, because we're going to learn as we do that first piece, we'll come back. And it's opening interesting discussions with our financial partners, but it's a different way of working, and you're working in small chunks, so failing is not a big deal anymore. It is truly a learning.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll talk at the very end of our discussion. I'm going to talk a little bit about failure, but you bring up an interesting point. It's not actually on the questions. I'm going to take an opportunity because you put it out there. So the investment piece of it, right? We're moving towards these quicker processes for getting investment. Treasury Board currently is not set up to support it, even though they speak the language very often to tell us to do it. So how do you bake failure into your investment management process? How is that? Should it be part of some small iterative proposal? Like how did it happen? I'm looking at you, Ross. What did you guys do?
Well, I mean, in the UK, it's an unsolved issue as well. How you fund agile delivery programs, agile services. At the moment in the UK, you have to go to Treasury Board and get money for specific outputs rather than outcomes still. And we just, in the UK, we just lump it, really. We just, we say, yeah, it's broadly a square blue thing that we're going to build. So give us the money for that. And then, when we are doing it day to day, sprint to sprint, phase to phase, we go where the research and the tests take us, and then ultimately we go back to Treasury and they're like, okay, where's our where's our blue square box thing? And we're like, well, we've got this red octagon here instead. And they're like, what? That's not what we asked for. It's like, well, too bad. But it works, and it's delivering the outcomes for people, and we need some more money to keep that going, and you're going to turn it off. So it's a kind of, it's a bit of an idea and a bit of brinksmanship, but it's made things go round in the UK, and I think that's about the decisions that our internal ops and our management at GDS took about how they were going to handle the money responsibly by doing, delivering a little and often, being led by where the research was taken, as having good tests that spoke to the standards, but not being driven by stuck with an output, that they originally got their funding for. And I think some of that piratical sort of approach to finance would be good here. And somebody in this room will do a big thing that's, that is seen as being critical national infrastructure in Canada in these ways. And then everybody else will just like, okay, that works. And off they will go. And because that is what happens.
Just do it.
That is what happened. Yes, seek forgiveness, not permission. And that is what happened in all these, the UK, the US, Australia, Singapore. That's how it's happening in these places.
So I actually feel a little bit better to know that somebody that has actually gone down that journey and still having challenges from the investment. I mean, I asked the question because I felt the pain. All of us are familiar with stage-gated process for investment management. You try to fit an agile thing into that and tell them that, no, I want to deliver value in gate 0, and I only want a small amount of money and see what happens. Right? So I think that the thing that we have to take away from here is keep pushing, right? We have to change the way that we do investment in order to succeed at Agile and DevOps. Otherwise, it's never going to work. And we have to solve that problem. We really do. And a little bit sad, though, that we haven't solved the problem.
No, but I think it's that Canada can be a fast follower in that regard. Like, why go through all that? GDS is 9 years old soon, and why go through all those same problems? There's an opportunity, particularly what's going to be happening in Canadian democracy soon. Like a chance to sort of change that approach. And I think when we're all giving transition advice and things like that, at a later date, it would be good to talk to the bosses of whatever colour about the opportunities that good financing of service transformation is as important as standards and the sort of the delivery that happens day to day.
So the standards were, and I know Julie, you mentioned standards going out. That's a different discussion. I know we're trying to move away from saying standards. Treasury Board actually, ironically, is one that tells me all the time, don't say standards. But I don't want to talk about standards, so sorry guys, I'm not going to talk about them. Thank you for that discussion. I want to move on to the next one, which is probably all, could directly impact us, let's call it that way. So Julie, you and I spoke a little bit about automation, robotics, right? So the actual, and this is one of the questions that actually went out to the Twitter world. So I guess the question is, if DevOps and what we're putting in tends to go towards automation, what is going to happen to all of the jobs that people are currently doing that are not automated? So it's a real fear, I think, for some people that we're going to give control over to these automated processes. What are your thoughts on that? And I know that you have a good use case to talk about.
Yeah, we did. We've done a use case at Transport that we've learned so much by. So just do the thing, kind of like what CDS says. So we had in our finance and HR area, they've got a number of very transactional, repetitive processes that are really business rules driven. So within just about 8 weeks, so they picked one process, one small process. It was a non-advertised appointment. So that process involved HR and finance. It involved inputs into about 10 of our different systems, whether HR, salary management, email. And we brought in Deloitte to work with us. And in about 8 weeks, we took that one process, just that one process, and we automated it with a bot. Okay, and we've got a little video. It's really cool because that bot has an email account. It will will email, like send emails, go in, put data in this system, log into the other system, put it there, send off an email, do things, and you can watch it do its thing. For that one little process, automated, we proved in that less than 2-month time frame, and hardly any money, that it would save about 19,000 hours worth of work, which is about 10 resources that would normally be doing that over a year. That was like a wowza for us, that one little process. So they've since identified about 8 or 10 processes in that area that we're automating now. Over the next year, it's not even that complicated to do. But we've been engaging, and the heads of HR and finance have been engaging with their teams. Everybody's thrilled about this. It's kind of the kind of work that nobody likes doing too. Because, you know, we've got to log in here, take that data, cut and paste it, put it in here. And it's not at all, nobody is talking about that those people are going to lose their jobs. There's, you know, in any department, there's more than enough work to go around. There's other work that they can be doing in terms of their jobs that is not about data input and that transactional stuff. So there was a lot of excitement. The other thing with that kind of work, we have high turnover as well, because people will come in, usually learn that and move on to something else. So it helps address the high turnover. That little bot, the software for it, and it's cloud-based, $15,000 for a license, Blue Prism. And with all the 8 or 10 processes that we're automating, that $15,000 a year license is going to cover the cost for that bot to do its work. And that bot doesn't take off a snow day, be at home with the kids, or go for lunch. They work 24/7. So the return on investment is huge, but it does allow the department then to look at the people it's had and shift things around. There's going to be all kinds of new roles emerging too in the digital era that we don't even know about yet. And even with that bot project, some of the return on investment is creating a new position in the CIO shop as a bot manager to sort of manage scaling this to other areas. And in finance, a new role called a bot supervisor. So just like somebody would supervise people, this person is going to be supervising the work of the bots. So new, interesting, like it's not a cool job, right? I'm the bot supervisor. But new and interesting things. So you've got to get out, and that started with an experiment of about 2 months on one little process that's turning into something that we can showcase around our whole department now in terms of finding efficiencies and freeing up people to do work of different value.
So that is great. I felt that way. So you're saying repurposing them to higher value stuff, right? Now I'm curious, I'm going to look at you, because you've got a huge challenge on your hand at SSC going forward with, you know, becoming a true service provider, delivery support, DevOps, Agile, and what are your thoughts on automation and what it's going to do at SSC?
Well, first of all, automation is one of the most important things you can do with the cloud, because you increase monitoring, you increase reliability. I think people have to deal with those. My 2 phones just dropped.
Hey, I have 2 too.
Yeah, that's right. And that's what happened when you join government. So yeah, I think people are really lifetime learners. So if they're given the opportunity of learning tools, they will do it. So I think that's, to your point, it's a question, and we have the chance of doing this. So it's a cultural change. I mean, architecture is not working the same way it used to work 2 years ago. I mean, we have to create SREs, we have to create, services that will serve the 43 departments, that will help departments. So it is a big change, but I think people are embracing that change, because it's basically, if you look at me, I've been in technology for all my life. I mean, I've been learning new stuff every year. So that's the only way you can still be in IT. I mean, it's always changing. So it's not that big of a challenge if you know software or you know operations to learn new skills, right? So you know things, and you learn a bit of new things, and then you kind of take the steps. So that's where we're going to do it. And the school will help us with great programs. We have a curriculum for different things. So that's how we're going to do it.
That's good to hear. I mean, I think it's kind of a universal message that's going on. I mean, to the middle, and I would say, I'm curious, at an actual doing it level, automation obviously is so critical to what we're doing. Are you seeing the actual developers buying in full on it?
Absolutely, like wholeheartedly. We did an experiment with one of the teams I was on before to automate, just do some automated testing, behavioral testing, as well as try to automate some of turn our requirements that we were getting into automated tests. And the first state was people were frustrated because they were doing manual testing. We couldn't keep up. We were getting in trouble because we couldn't do full regression testing every 2 weeks. That's impossible. So the morale was really low, and then we made this concerted effort to say, okay, like, this is not going well. Let's spend the time that it takes to get a dip in productivity to actually automate this stuff. And suddenly people were extremely excited. They got to upskill themselves. They got to learn something new. They got to be challenged. And that the happiness and the way that brought that team together after that was, it was remarkable. People get excited. They want to do this stuff. The only time we've experienced a bit of fear over job loss is the people who have done manual testing their whole life. And it's a little bit intimidating to go from clicking a screen to starting to have to script that stuff. But even at that point, eventually, they started to join in and really get involved and understand that my job doesn't go away, it just changes. I get to do something different, I get to do something new, and I get to ultimately provide more value because I can be challenged in a different way, and I can be more high value.
That is, it's good to hear, and I share the same opinion of it. So I mean, that's my sharing that piece of it. I'm looking mindful of time. Jason's going to walk in front of me here. I know we started late, so I'm still going to take more time than I'm going to take our time. I think there's one last question that I'm going to ask you before we sort of allow the audience to talk to us, ask us questions, and I'm going to ask you to give a really quick response to it. And it's probably not a discussion piece; it's your thought, and you got the question sent to you. So yeah, it was in the beginning, and it's basically what impact do you feel that cloud, agile, DevOps is going to have on the way that the government delivers services, technology, and just really short, your quick blast of it. And start with you, Julie.
Quicker. I think it does allow us to be quicker. It breaks down silos because it's all based on really integrated teams, user-centric focus on it, quicker to learn, scale, fail, learn.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will let us do continuous delivery, and that will mean better service outcomes for Canadians, and that's the most important thing. That's the reason why we need to pick up these tools.
It tackles our biggest bottleneck. It is the big problem, and doing anything outside of that problem can really not get us that much further. So we get to tackle the one thing that's really holding us back from delivering better services.
John?
Time to market, time to deploy, I guess, in government, and also reliability.
Okay.
Because that was the mentioned by the others, but there's so many, I agree with everything that was said.
Well, I would have to say for me, I agree with all of you on that one. I wouldn't be here talking about that. I don't think there's any more for me to add on what it can possibly do. The discussion has been great, guys. I think that we could probably have another hour to talk about it because there is so much to change. And so I think if I want to turn it over to the floor, before I do that, I think there's one last slide that I want to bring up, and it's about to come over here. Bring the next one. Bring the next one. So when we started, we said it's about change, and I think I sort of had a theme about the fact that we need to move faster. And this one came actually out of, we're not sure the origins of the quote. Dwayne went to DevOps Days in Toronto, came back, sent me a Slack message on it, and I really stuck to this, and this one really is: culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? We have strategies 5 years out, right? Strategy even a year out. And if the culture decides that they're not going in that direction, you can forget whatever you've planned, you're going to have to adapt to it. And what we're bringing in with cloud, what we're bringing with agile, what we're bringing in with DevOps is the ability to shift quickly, to adjust, to iterate. So that's what you should be taking back from this. You are the culture. You need to eat your breakfast, right? So with that, I want to actually open the floor to questions, and then we'll do a couple slides before you head out. And I don't know there's another session happening right over here if we're holding them back. Okay, so we got a break. Good. So, the floor is open for questions. Vous pouvez demander en français ou anglais, English or French, doesn't matter. I know we didn't have a lot of discussion in French, like zero. Mais il y a des personnes ici qui parlent français. Feel free to speak in the language of your choice. So, floor is open. And I don't think if you want a mic, I can give you the mic. You can talk on the mic if you want. Questions to the panel?
Well, I can start it. Just, we're kind of preaching to the crowd here where I think a lot of us agree with all of these concepts, or at least are on board to learn about it. How do we reach the people who aren't here today? How do we get this message across? Because I think we're all experiencing the same thing where we're pushing this in our organizations and we get so far and we hit that one group or the one person or that person who owns something that we need who doesn't agree with this. How do we get through that? Because we're all trying to push it forward, but we all know that there are situations where it's not going to succeed. How do we get through that?
That was a tougher question than all the other.
And I don't have to answer it. See, that's your question.
Well, I think it's definitely the case. You know, we work. CDS works with partner departments, and you know, we often do come, you know, with our partner group that we're working with in the department. Eventually, you know, hit some other group or some, you know, person who wants to say no to us. I mean, I think, like, I just always say to us, like, don't panic. You know, we knew to expect somebody would come along some of the way, and we get better and better the early stages of our work to sort of like maybe say some provocative things and get these people to sort of make, you know, break ground, and then, you know, it's about talking to them, about listening to them, like, you know, what, like asking, you know, like 5 whys. You know, why is this an issue for you? Like, what are you worried is going to happen? And, you know, I would say sometimes you have answers to those questions, and other times you've got to say, okay, well, that's an interesting, like, test, you know, or a hypothesis for us to explore. Again, I think it's the you know, prove through delivery, and don't let yourself get stuck in a like prove it by writing a positioning paper, or, you know, or writing a lot of documentation to do it. Like, to say, okay, give me 2 weeks. We're going to build a thing, prototype. We're going to get to use it and probe it, and then, you know, let's
So what you're saying is bring them on board, make them part of the problem, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you want to add something?
Yes, I think it's all about, I mean, every time I have a project to sell or a change, you have to show the benefit for, you know, the customers, the employees, and in your business model, you have to make sure you get all the costs there, and you can actually have the proof in the pudding, right? So you cannot, you know, a progress like the cloud will happen, and you get hurdles, but it's how you get, you know, to those coaching questions and why, and I think it's a big thing. So we got to get better at it. I mean, the failure question I got is a bit related to this. I find that sometimes we're not that good at selling, replatforming or rewriting software, government, elsewhere. That's why we have these legacy things. I think there's a bias towards keeping them because we're not good at, you know, showing the progress and the real cost of keeping them. So I think it's all about, in the private sector, the finance has to show and the customer, but here in government, there's also, like, you know, what is good for the employees, for our internal customers, and the progress, and the Canadian citizens, basically. So if you prove that, you go ahead.
Julie's
So,
waiting.
yeah, so I think that's such a good question. That's kind of at the base of everything we're talking about. Culture is contagious. I completely believe that culture is contagious. So don't be afraid to just start small with a bunch of little things and hack away at the culture. I think of where we started with 1 or 2 agile teams, you know, that was sort of deliberate, let's get it going. And then you start seeing those little agile teams producing stuff, and there's chatter. Then they've removed their cubicle walls, and you see Kanban boards up and wind walls and stickies, and other people want to do it, and it gets contagious, and just keep hacking at it. Engage everybody a lot. I see Kofi back there. My guy, he runs Tech Talk Thursdays. He did that on his own. That just brings people together. He brings in different departments to come and talk about what they're doing. He's got Ask Me Anything sessions, myth-busting sessions. It brings people together to have the conversation, and you change culture one person at a time. I'm going to, one other thing to hack the culture, and I know it's not on this topic, but it was trying to get people at Transport Canada to think about putting their code out in GitHub as open source.
Oh, yeah.
I was asking people to do it and asking people to do it, and nobody was doing it. So then I tweeted one day to all my people saying, I'm going to buy pizza for whichever team does this first. And within about a week, one of the teams had put their stuff out on GitHub, and I had pizza with them, and it was amazing what they learned from that experience that they showed me. And now we've got like 15, 20 things out there, and it's just sort of...
So on that, right,
Yeah.
and before we leave that, but it was key is you did it, where the position that you sit at, so critical that our senior leaders, right, support this way of working and actually call us out when we don't actually follow our own words, right? So I would really love to see that message taken back to all of the senior leaders that are here today. I mean, that it's so critical. We need that from you, right? We need you to be able to support this journey, right? So
with pizza.
with that security.
So I kind of want to add the working level perspective. If you're down in the weeds doing this stuff and you're constantly running up against people who are averse to change, and it happens to be your senior leadership or your middle management, you can leave. Sometimes there's nothing you can do other than look for the people who understand where you're coming from and will support you, because you can't change everybody. You can prove it, but you can only do so much when you're in a position that's, you know, a day-to-day job. So start working in the open, start connecting with these communities, the DevOps League, get out on GitHub, get on GC Message. You'll meet people really quickly that are like-minded, and just go there.
Do you want to sure, hey,
Just
and then we'll go to a question.
put yourselves in too, because we've got, like, so I've got this great Code for Canada team, and I don't know, I think I saw Fatima here. There she is. We love them. They're doing amazing things, but we brought them in to talk to our deputies and all of our ADMs about their experience, unscripted. We let them just come in and talk, which was one of the best sessions ever, but we asked them about culture, and they say, that's great, you've got the leaders saying, do it, do it. You've got the junior employees and CSs all wanting to do it, do it. They were seeing things get stuck often at the middle layer, at that CS3, CS4. So just asking everybody, check yourselves in as well. I know we've got the converted, but check yourselves in and ask yourself the hard question. Are you the one being risk adverse? Are you the one putting in any blockers, and how can you change? And how can you, if you want help in changing, speak to people that can help you with that?
I just wanted to,
Oh, which one first here? You started. Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I just wanted to follow up quickly when you said it stalls. So I love that quote. The one that I also like from a coworker, and I try to remember, it was something related to the biggest threat to your project comes from people who can stop it by not doing anything. So I worked in the application development side, so often we have really gung-ho clients and really good development teams that want to move things faster. And they get stalled by the DPMO that requires a lot produced before you can get to it, or SSC that needs a BRD, and that doesn't get created.
Yeah, we didn't say the BRD word here today. I actually had a question specifically around BRDs and how they were going to adapt to that. But I didn't
But
realize
just
it.
when it says that the culture thing, yes, please help us change that. So that
Open the dialogue in your department.
We have Mohammed.
So just to ask a question about, as given we have lived and evolved through experimentation, we survive through experimentation. It's the nature of things, it's a great experiment. And usually we survive by doing experimentation to resolve a problem. We're seeing with the experimentation concept of philosophy coming to the government, some of the ugly effects of the experimentation. We're going to do blockchain. Why? Because we're going to do blockchain. It's part of experimentation innovation. How do you guys see us doing experimentation, but also avoiding that ugly effect of spending money per student or accountable to the citizen, spending money wisely to do the right thing rather than doing it for the sake?
focus on
That's-
who you're delivering to.
Yeah.
Who is your user? What is the actual use case you're going to do? Don't do blockchain to do blockchain. Do blockchain because there's a problem that it's a right fit to solve. Focus on users.
Yeah, so this is good. And I always ask everybody when I start something, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Any meeting, anything you go into and somebody's got a shiny new toy, the first question you ask, what is the problem you're trying to solve? So,
Yeah, we do that. Just one approach that I like in management is tight, loose, tight. So the requirements have to be and business model well understood. And how you do this, it can be blockchain, it can be a blockchain experiment, other things, and get to a pivot, decide what you're going to do. And then at the end, you got to make sure, even though you're agile, that what you're delivering, your minimal viable product, is actually going to delight your customers. So I think that's one way of looking at it.
I think as well building on that, you said no to standards, but there's the digital standards, the government account digital standards are helpful in that respect as well, because they start with, how you involved users.
they did start out as principles though, right?
Well, yeah.
So they're wavering a little bit because they started with principles, standards, right?
I think we that might be that might be too granular a discussion for what's the impulse is right in them, I think.
Yeah.
And
The way it works.
that's and there's a standard in there that's talks about ethical providing ethical services as well. And we at CDS with our partners, and we've started doing it for people that we're not in partnership with. We're doing assessments as well against these standards, so asking teams to account for how they are providing ethical services, how they've used put stuff in the open, how they've involved users as well. It's if you do that at the discovery stage, and you do it at the prototyping, and then when you're doing your releases, and then before you go to live as well, I think you could catch some of those things as well by. And I would like to do that with peers as well. I'd like a community of practice to be involved in that, so we're holding one another to account as well as supporting one another. I think that'd be good.
So, question. Shall we go with you and then you?
So my name is Dinesh, I'm with Shared Services. I guess listening to the panel, it's obviously clear that there is a lot of work taking place, lots of learning that is coming through that work. And I think, again, going back to the question that was asked earlier, maybe like the bot example that you mentioned, really, like obviously very interesting, the agile teams and those concepts, very interesting. We don't have to necessarily answer today, but I think in terms of the events like these, where obviously one can come and learn, the teams and their experiences and their lessons learned, how are those getting captured and getting sort of shared across GC right now? So obviously a lot of work is taking place.
Tweet about it. Get on social media. I'm not kidding. So my direct reports are not doing their job if they're not on social media. They know that. It is a game changer in how you work. It puts you in touch with people that can help you out, share what you're working on, talk about it, work out loud, and those connections get made. That's
Shameless
really
plug
easy.
for the GC DevOps Week. I will tell you that is what we were trying to accomplish, right? And absolutely, Twitter is one of the huge pieces, as is many of you using Slack. We have established Slack workspaces for the league. And I imagine there are others. CES, you've got your Slack piece that you're doing, so.
I think Julie said earlier as well, get the codes that you're creating out in the open as well, and a little shout to keeping your documentation up to date as well, and talk about why did we do these things. I think if we share a lot more at the code level as well, then that will help bring up the whole threshold of what we're capable of as a government.
You did pay me, by the way, for putting the plug in for DevOps Week.
No, I know, that's it, the beer later, so.
I think the biggest concern for any data with cloud is security. My question to you is, do you see that there is a possibility in the near future to have a center of excellence, centralized center of excellence in the whole government of Canada has made security to that process?
So let me rephrase it, or let me see if I understand your question. You're asking if at the central spot we would have a center of expertise or excellence around security to help us speed up what we're trying to accomplish here. So yeah, for sure, all of us, we've talked a lot about shifting left, security by design. We're all trying, and what that says is putting champions within the different teams, as opposed to like the security team, which doesn't know at the end of the process. So would we want to establish some sort of central group that could help bring these champions up within all the areas? So
it's part of our SSC mandate in terms of the enablement of the cloud. So we're providing soon a protected B vehicle, but also the network gear and the different things we need to have in there to protect information transit and at rest. So I think, it's one of the big difference with the private industry. Actually, in the private industry, the big challenge was privacy, because we have a government rule that's called PIPEDA for the businesses that we don't have here. So when I came here, I said, wow, it's much easier. I mean, we make it tough for the businesses, but we just need to comply with the Privacy Act. So you go with Protected B, the framework is well defined. It's for us to develop the tools, make them frictionless. So that's a big trick to enable the cloud in that manner, and that's something that we're doing in our group.
If there is a center, then I think it's super small and it's time bound, and the sooner there can be a networked community of practice where that ability, that expertise is out, not necessarily and not centralized in departments, but in the service delivery teams. Then that's
so you're touching on it all, and there's a few questions that I had about 6 questions prepared for the panel today, right? And I'm not asking any more right now, but I know we're all dying to go. We're going to close it down here. It was about breaking silos. A lot of it was about, how do we cross boundaries right now and act as one organization, right? These are all things we're trying to figure out because we all recognize that we're doing things in smaller ways and we want to learn from each other. So the culture thing, we're trying to change that. I think there are grassroots groups like the GC DevOps League where you could come to, and there are security people in that, and we're trying to figure out how we can create what we call these SWAT teams, basically, that can come and help a department and agency accelerate in DevOps and in security. So I would say we know we got to do it. We're trying to figure it out. We don't have an answer. I mean, and there are central agencies that do support it, but at the end of the day, we need to bring that knowledge up within the teams that do it, and so there's no quick fix for that right now. So I think we probably are about to close this down. Are there any other burning, pressing questions? And then that'll be the last one.
Yeah, so as leaders and innovators, how do you deal with that problem that we dealt with, or the issue we touched on about middle management? I've certainly run into it. And how do you feel about hierarchy and chain of command? Say someone a few levels below you is running into issues with their manager, and they can't implement what they want to, and they present ideas to you that would be, received differently. Is that kind of, don't talk about that, it needs to come from your manager kind of thing? Or how would you respond?
So I know for me, my door is always open. Of course, you encourage people first to talk to their direct managers, but...
I should preface that with I'm in like kind of I come from a D&D and a nursing background with chain of command, certainly.
I think the way, if you can create a lot of different ways to engage staff, to hear from them. Like I told you about some of the sessions we have, those things bubble up naturally. I hold, it's called Fresh Eyes sessions with sort of the fresh eyes of the organization regularly, where you can kind of ask them, how are things going? What are you seeing? What's working? It's not about like reporting on your manager, but you really can get a sense for where things are happening and where the blockers are. And again, I'll say, sorry, even if architecture review boards are going away, I love it. It is the best place for insight into the organization and where the blockers are.
I would add that, it's about fair process. Coming back in government, and I was at CSC, so it's like D&D, coming back in government at SSC and spending my life in, I had offices in France, in the US, CTO in the US, so the culture plays a lot in the way the hierarchy is being plate. But I think the idea is the master thing, right? So you have to have a fair process where people can share ideas. And social networks, Slack channels help that. And you have to make people understand that they can, disagree with you. And at the end of the fair process session, there will be like not one idea, but it's all about, that culture of exchange of information and sharing, ideas. And for a leader like me, it's telling them that, hey, I've got lame ideas all the time. It's all about finding the best one in a group of people and going ahead with it.
Yeah, it's, there were some, and I'm going to move on to the slide, I'm going to close it, but I want to sort of close off on something. There were some questions related to, does power structures, in government really support the ability to do what we want to do of breaking silos? Are we actually sort of set up to fail regardless? And I don't mean like the good fail, the bad fail, right? So my message back to you on that question is, and it's going to be a little bit like what Britt had said, ultimately, if you're in an organization that just doesn't want to listen and isn't going to let you go that way, you have the opportunity to move. But there are those people that I want to use the word dedicated. They're willing to try whichever route they can to push their agenda forward, and you will eventually find somebody that's going to listen to you and hopefully get your back to bring that forward. And I just encourage you to continue trying. Try pushing the agenda forward. We are out there, we are trying to make this happen. So it is so important that that culture propagates itself. So I'm going to close the questions on that. I have 2 slides that I want to talk about, so if you want to bring up the next one. Is it going to come? Here we go, I'll bring it up. So, failure. We're having a failure party. We don't often talk about celebrating our failures, right? GC DevOps Week is going to host a failure party on July 17th. It's going to be at the Parents Pub. There's information through the actual Twitter account. You can reach out to me as well, but it's not about the failure. It's about what you learned from the failure. There's going to be prizes. We hope to make this, whether it's a twice-a-year event. I am asking you guys, the leaders, to bring that back. We want to have some real failures. We want people, what did you learn from it? Come to it. It's got to be celebrated. It's the only way that we learn. We need to get it out in the open. So please be mindful of that. And finally, those are the 2 accounts. If you don't follow the GC DevOps, that's me below it. 2 hashtags. All of you are on Twitter, I know, because I've been going back and forth with you, so you can reach out to them. I do have my government email. I want to thank all of you for being here, especially the panelists. I really enjoyed the chat today. I think it was really interesting and insightful for what we did. So thank you very much.